West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And ruling after ruling, the conservatives on this court have worked to turn back the clock on the rights of disenfranchised citizens in this country. Just go down the list, from abortion rights to voting rights to the right to a fair and affordable education, to the right to openly express your sexual orientation, even gender identity. This court has made its central mission to undo progress wherever it sees it. We're going to talk about all of those decisions throughout this hour. But I want to start tonight with the big picture. How does America deal with a reactionary court dead set on turning back the clock? And what, if anything, can be done to stop it? Joining us now is Melissa Murray, NYU law professor and co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast. She's also an MSNBC contributor. Also with us is Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate, covering the courts and law. So, Melissa, I'll start with you. I mean, just kind of the big picture takeaway of what we saw unfold today. People on the surface may think of these cases being very different on the issues that they tackled, even if they are hypothetical, as we said with Chris there. But there is a connective tissue between all of them, as I was just kind of outlining there. Do you see that as well, that there is a common theme between all of these cases?
I think there's a common theme between the cases we saw this term and the cases we saw last term, especially Dobbs. Basically, we are seeing the court roll back the protections that make it possible and indeed facilitate the prospect of a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy, education, reproductive rights, financial security, all of these things that we need in order to have a democracy that is inclusive and includes everyone. And that seems to be the thing the court is railing against. And to be very clear, we had a barn burner of a term last year, and typically the rhythms of the Supreme Court are such that when you have a big one, you take a breather. Right. But no, they had a barn burner of a term this year. It looks like they're shaping up to have a barn burner of a term next year. And the question I think the American people has to ask at this point is, how many barns are there left to burn, or is this court just intent on burning it all down? Yeah, and to that point, I mean, this is, Mark, the Roberts Court, right? So I guess my question to you is the legacy of the Roberts Court now going to be about undoing the progress that has been made throughout the 21st century?
That will absolutely be a huge part of John Roberts' legacy, that he rolled back not only voting rights in Shelby County v. Holder, but affirmative action, and the very notion that diversity is a laudable and compelling goal that the government can pursue through race-conscious measures, and now through the 303 creative decision that gay and lesbian Americans have a right to equal access in the marketplace. All of those principles have now been bulldozed. in an extraordinarily short period of time. And I think that in addition to rolling back the clock, John Roberts is reasserting himself and his court as the chief decision maker in this country. You know, the Supreme Court is very much the number one policy-making body of the nation. And the Chief Justice, through these decisions, is reminding us, you know, Congress can pass whatever laws it likes, the president can roll out whatever programs he wants, the states can experiment, but at the end of the day, we will be the ones to decide what you can do. We will be the ones to say the meaning of the Constitution and to overthrow any contrary ideas that you try to implement in the name of democracy. And I think that is a frightening message that the chief could not have sent louder or clearer this term.
I want to ask you specifically about the 303 case, if I can, and the free speech argument that was made. And I understand that, you know, that applies to individuals, but then when you get to the position of a business, how does a business have a free speech right, so to speak?
Well, that's a terrific question, Eamon. Justice Gorsuch today spoke in this opinion as though the prospect of an anti-discrimination law that requires anyone doing business in the public sphere is essentially akin to requiring them to adopt the state's message of anti-discrimination. But that's not really the case.
It's a bit of a stretch, yeah.
Well, Lori Smith, if she were actually making websites for individuals, which is still an open question, she could simply have her evangelical beliefs and she could talk about them and she could espouse them as she wanted to. But the point that Colorado makes is when you decide to enter the public marketplace and provide services, you must do it for everyone who seeks those services without fear or favor for any particular group. And the court today said that, no, that's basically anti-discrimination law is the state making you adopt an anti-discrimination message. And so that should be chilling to anyone in the United States who's from a group that historically has been disenfranchised, has been underrepresented, has been discriminated against, because it means that regardless of these anti-discrimination protections, which exist primarily on the state level, there's not necessarily broad protections for sexual orientation on the federal level. All of these state level laws are now in question because simply individuals can say, this violates my right to free speech. It is a compelled message that the state is making me adopt. And the court has essentially blessed that.
Mark, you know, these justices, when they were, again, going through the confirmation process, talked about how there is precedence and so many of these cases are settled law, and they've totally upended a lot of that, obviously with perhaps the biggest one being Roe versus Wade. But how dangerous, if at all, are the precedents being set by these cases? I mean, what implications do they have for other rights, as Melissa was just talking to? I mean, thinking about not just gay rights, but other minority rights now. You could get somebody who says it is their religious belief not to provide services, you know, because somebody is involved in an interracial marriage or somebody is Muslim or Jewish.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no limiting principle in Justice Gorsuch's opinion for the court that restricts the scope of this decision to LGBTQ people. It seems that it applies across the board to all kind of protected traits. And so one question Justice Sotomayor asked is the famous case Heart of Atlanta Motel in the 60s, when a motel argued that it had a right not to serve Black people. Would that case come out differently if the hotel had said, well, we feel that allowing Black people to stay in our rooms is an expression of support for their identities and their lives? And I think that's very much an open question. So, you know, we focus on these kind of edge cases, the florist, the baker, whatever. But this decision pushes way past that into the realm of all manner of public accommodation laws, as Justice Sotomayor points out. You know, expressive conduct is everywhere once you start to look for it. The very act of serving a customer can be expressive, even if you aren't creating anything for them. And so I do think that interracial couples, religious minorities, women, all kinds of people who face discrimination have to wonder now, have to second guess, you know, if I seek services from this business, is there a chance they'll say, sorry, but my free speech rights allow me to discriminate against you? And as Justice Sotomayor says, that itself, the fact that the court has issued this decree, stamps a badge of inferiority on us, on all minorities who will face the tragedy of this decision. And again, what a difference 5 years makes, that just a few years ago, this court was expanding same-sex marriage rights to the entire country, refused to take the step that it took today in Masterpiece Cake Shop. This is the inevitable result of Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett joining this court. And this is only the beginning of this new line of precedent. We will see how far it develops, but this is really the dawn of a new era in First Amendment law.
Did you want to say something in response?
Mark said something that's really interesting here, and it goes to this question of, like, what is expressive conduct? Ultimately, in this opinion, expressive conduct is whatever Neil Gorsuch and 5 of his colleagues thinks is expressive. And that's another theme that you see in the student loan cases as well. There, the court says, where there is an issue of major salience, a major question, so to speak, it is not up to Congress to simply delegate that authority to an administrative agency to make the decision that they're going to act on these major questions. Congress must specifically delegate authority to address that particular question, here, student loan relief, to the administrative agency. But the question of what is a major question is ultimately a question that can only be answered by this court. So in this decision and in 303 Creative, the person that's won here is this institution, the court that gets to say what is speech, what is a major question, and what is the extent of their impact on our lives.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to Mark's point, just as a final summary here, at the end of the day, it seems like the Supreme Court is legislating these issues. I mean, you had the affirmative action case brought by billionaires. You had the student loan forgiveness case not brought forward by students. And in both cases, the Supreme Court is making a decision that affects millions.
It is Monday, the 3rd of July of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, River City Hash Mondays, because it is Monday, and we do that. All right, if you've ever been in the food business, you know what happens on Mondays. That's right. For those who are open, because there's many who are not, how dare they? But those who are open are serving those who are not. That's how it works. Okay, so enough of that. How was your weekend? Were you rate limited like the rest of us around the world? Too much democracy, too much freedom, too much free speech for the hoi polloi. And that's who we are. Yep, our betters are telling us how much we can speak. And read, apparently. Yep. I keep telling everybody, rate limits on a big social media platform that relies on ad clicks might not be a good idea. Might not. Unless it's on purpose. Does this guy actually think that if he restricts supply, it's going to increase demand, and therefore he's going to get a better deal on his dollar on the ads? You never know. He was somehow able to wrest billions of government dollars, our dollars, to put into his pocket so that he can tell us that we can't warn each other about tornadoes because we're rate limited. Well, we can warn them, nobody can read them. Sorry, try again later. Yeah, well. It's all on purpose. When I said there's just too much democracy going on for our betters to handle. Before it was sort of like, let them play. It's sort of like, an amusement park. Let them have their fun. Let them have their roller coaster. Let them have their beat up the bearded lady. All right. I guess that's what they're doing now. They're beating up the bearded lady. And saying the bearded lady can't read to the kids now. Jeez, there's a whole history of bearded ladies reading to the kids. Right after they took out the heel in the wrestling match. God, I just don't understand. Okay. We're a country of anomalies. We're supposed to embrace them, not separate them. Well, apparently our betters, like on the Roberts Court, well, they were on a mission. We all named it back in the day, too, because it was all staffed by all these former Soviet fighters. My God. And they took the Soviet model, the 70, the 50, and the 70-year plan, and they put it into use. They said, we'll play the long game just like the Soviets. Look how well it worked for them. And they didn't even understand what they were saying. Because we all pointed out, yeah, look how it worked for them. All right. They thought if they could mix it up a little bit with some National Socialism, oh yeah, we got our Burgermeisters. When I call our Burgermeisters here Burgermeisters, I am not using it as hyperbole. It is exactly what I mean. A Nazi Burgermeister is a Nazi Burgermeister is a Nazi Burgermeister, and by any other name. Yeah, Shakespeare and Company, this. Okay. I don't think there's going to be any refuge in Paris, Texas. Don't want to go there on a hot day. Nope. Speaking of hot days, that's what we're getting, and we're going to give you a weather report, but I just got to tell you, we're back in our hot days. Fortunately, and now as soon as I mention it, maybe I shouldn't, but now as soon as I mention it, the winds will shift and we'll get all that Canadian smoke here too. Because we've had some hot, but not smoky days. And last year, well, years past, oh my God, it was terrible. And then we had these glorious Oregon rains of old. We were once a rainforest, you know, before we became chaparral. At least where I'm at. Chaparral keeps spreading. Or are the forests retreating? We don't know. I think it's both. Yes. Anyway, we had these glorious rains that fed the deep-rooted trees, and they needed it badly. Filled our reservoirs and lakes. Our rivers are up. It's neat to see our rivers up to where they used to be able to, put boats into the river off the boat ramps. Before, you had this like massive cliff of rocky embankment, and you're not going to put your boat off that and hope you can hit the river. And you can't get down there and hoist it down either. So it's kind of neat seeing how it used to be. But I know what's going to happen because around here people are allowed to burn their trash. And something's going to happen. And they'll blame it on the government because they always do around here. Yes, they do. Okay, well, enough of rambling. But it is Monday. A day before a holiday. Will we have a show tomorrow? Maybe. Oh, you know what? I do need to warn you. Gunner has to go in for a procedure today. He's got a bad ear infection. And I've been trying to take care of it, but he needs to be put under sedation and have the canals irrigated out squeaky clean. And then we can get the antibiotic in there and stave off anything new that can come about. But right now, it's just you can't get the canal cleared up enough with the solution to, He likes getting his ears rubbed, though, and all that canal there behind his ears, you don't know. But if you have any kind of animals, maybe you do. But so he's going to have that done, and I'm hoping I don't have to break away from the show to do it, but we may have to be, but time constraints, as we say. But I may be able to fit it in, and we can get there in time because they're only about 2 minutes away, just literally around the corner. Few corners. It's really like there's one corner, but I got to drive down a few streets. All right, what do we have in store for you today here in the Bistro Cafe as we begin this fabulous day before Independence Day? Yeah, that's right. Well, where are we? Oh, we're in the Bistro Cafe. That's right. A longtime Rutgers professor is glad her exchange went viral in which New York City Mayor Eric Adams called her a plantation owner. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, but interestingly enough, she actually happens to be a Holocaust survivor. But, and she says she's not using that against him. How would he know? Well, you never know what might happen when you open your mouth, whoever you are. And that's okay because we live in, free speech, right? I guess so. Hey, thousands of hotel workers across Southern California walked off the job over the weekend. A holiday weekend, by the way. And the first Asian contestant to win the crown in the pageant's 85 years, the current Miss Texas is taking on the state's most virulent Republican leaders. Because no one else will, so Miss Texas will. After the break, we move to the chef's table where tens of thousands rallied across Australia in support of Indigenous reform. And the right-wing mayor of Lisbon has been accused of boycotting Portugal's first memorial to victims of slavery. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who is attending Netroots Nation this year in Chicago, which is coming up, I think, this week. Right up after Independence Day. Hey, so thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do, and let's look forward to Netroots Nation there in Chicago. Looks like a lot of interesting panels once again. If you would look across from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the left and down just a skosh. I am bringing that word back. Skosh. Just down a skosh. You will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and the other costs that are fixed and surprises, because that's what happens. And we've been able to patch this powerhouse of resistance together and fly under the radar by one of the big ways, paying our bills. And you have been a great help in allowing us to do that, and therefore fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. So please, if you could, go to our Patreon page, and if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, it really does help us pay those bills and those other costs. And I got to tell you, they keep coming up, and they keep increasing in cost, in the amount of dollars they want. Nothing ever goes down. Anyway, thank you for your generosity over these many years, and thank you to those of you who may consider doing so in the future. Please consider it, and thank you. Okay, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you might not be able to follow us so well on Twitter because I think we're going to make a full bug out as far as the station. I may stay on to the bitter end. I don't know. Anyway, you can follow us on social media. Generally, just at Netroots Radio. Thanks, Tom, for taking care of those. But you're going to see us a lot on Mastodon and Spoutable. So follow us there. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, Mastodon and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots. At Netroots. You can do so at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And then you can always, of course, find those show notes and links and get the actual reportage from the actual reporters by the links provided on the social media feeds that I have. So there. You can follow the show on Twitter. Maybe. It's rate limited. Everything is now. At Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, not Stitcher. You can do it by iTunes, Deezer. I don't know. Tune in. It's since Stitcher is no longer. It's hard because you patch 12 years together with Patter, and they disrupt your patter. Wherever you can find podcasts, would you pick us up? Thanks. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by, I got to scroll down here, I think it's Jackie Roman. It is by Jackie Roman out of NewJersey.com. A professor of 20 years at Rutgers University, Newark, who New York City Mayor Eric Adams called a plantation owner at a town hall last Wednesday during a heated exchange over rent increases, said she's glad their confrontation went viral. I am happy it happened because now this is going to bring attention to what kind of a mayor he is and how anti-people he is, said Jeannie Dubnow, an 83-year-old professor of microbiology at Rutgers U and longtime tenants' rights activist in her Washington Heights neighborhood in Manhattan. The interaction occurred at a Talk with Eric community event in Washington Heights, part of a series of at least 9 town halls where, quote, New Yorkers can discuss all the issues that are important to them with the mayor and city government leadership, and, quote, according to a city press release, which is a nice way of saying that basically the mayor is going to harangue you if you dare speak out of, out of whatever. Now, Dabno was the first community member to speak at the event and began reading a prepared statement confronting Adams about back-to-back rent increases in rent-stabilized apartments. I said, I wanted to tell you, Mayor Adams, you're the enemy of rent-stabilized tenants, Dabno recalled. And then I started talking about how you support the outrageous rent increases passed by the Rent Guidelines Board, many of whose members were appointed by you. Adams then interjected to say he doesn't control the Rent Guidelines Board, which establishes rent adjustments in New York City's rent-stabilized units. I don't control the board. I make appointments. They make the decision. Everyone knows I don't control the board, Adams said. Now, that's not true, said Dabno, a volunteer with the Riverside and Edgecombe Neighborhood Association, a tenants and housing rights advocacy group. Rising to her feet, Dabno accused Adams of controlling the Rent Guidelines Board and criticized him for 2 years of rent increases on rent-stabilized apartments. Why in New York City, where the real estate is controlling you, Mr. Mayor, why are we having these horrible rent increases last year and this year? Dabno asked. Adams did not answer the question. He instead fired back at Dubnow and compared her to a slave owner. If you're going to ask a question, don't point at me and don't be disrespectful to me. I'm the mayor of this city, and you treat me with respect I deserve to be treated, Adams said. Wow. Here comes the new royalty, just like the old royalty. I'm speaking to you like an adult. Don't stand in front of me like you treated someone that's on the plantation that you own. Give me the respect I deserve, said the mayor. Now, Dubnow said she was not hurt by the mayor's words. She was more surprised by his reaction. I guess he got angry at me for having the guts and the nerve to criticize it, which anybody can criticize an elected official. I've done it many times, Dubnow said. She said she went home thinking the whole event was a waste of time. That is, until her children began sending her viral tweets and videos on social media depicting the exchange. The interaction received coverage in news outlets around the country and even internationally. Dubnow's phone began ringing off the hook, and her email inbox began filling up with people asking about the Riverside Edgecombe Neighborhood Association. I've gotten incredible emails, including from community people who I don't even know who want to join our group, Dubnow said. Now, she also happens to be a survivor of Nazi Germany, having fled Europe with her family during the Holocaust as a young child. This fact has been included in coverage of the exchange with Adams, but Dubnow does not find it relevant. That is true, but I cannot blame Mayor Adams. He had no idea, and I don't want people to use that to try to say that he was being anti-Semitic, because I would never claim that, Dubnow said. She said she has not heard from Adams since the incident and does not expect him to apologize. The mayor's office said earlier this week it was standing by the remarks. Although she didn't expect to become this week's viral sensation, Dubnow said she's grateful for the attention. This helps the housing movement because more and more people now are aware of what he has done, Dubnow said. She also hopes the interaction inspires others to advocate for their own communities and not fear the ire of elected officials. Speak up, Dubnow said. There's nothing he can do to you for speaking up. Ellen Lee, Shauna Hussein, Suzanne Rust, and Hannah Fry from the Los Angeles Times bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Thousands of workers at hotels across Southern California walked off the job yesterday, Sunday, demanding higher pay and better benefits, and beginning what could be the largest U.S. strike for the industry in recent memory. The strike affects roughly 15,000 cooks, room attendants, dishwashers, servers, bellmen, and front desk agents at hotels in Los Angeles and Orange counties, including the JW Marriott in the LA Live Entertainment District and luxury destinations like the Fairmont Miramar in Santa Monica. Our members were devastated first by the pandemic and now by the greed of their bosses. Kurt Peterson, co-president of the Unite Here Local 11, said in a statement yesterday morning, "The industry got bailouts while we got cuts. Now the hotel negotiators decided to take a 4-day holiday instead of negotiating. Shameful." The union represents more than 32,000 hospitality workers across SoCal and Arizona. The union, which has been negotiating for a new contract since April, has pushed for higher pay for members, a $5 immediate hourly wage increase, and a $3 boost annually for 3 years to cover rising costs in the region. The strike, which is expected to last several days, is the latest labor effort in Southern California, where workers across multiple industries say inflation and high housing costs have made it untenable to live and provide for families. More than 500 workers at the Intercontinental and Indigo hotels in downtown Los Angeles were the first to join the strike, taking to the streets with picket signs at 6 a.m. yesterday morning Sunday. Workers at the DoubleTree by Hilton and the Biltmore Los Angeles downtown soon joined the walkout, along with those from the Laguna Cliffs Marriott Resort and Spa in Dana Point. Metro bus drivers and motorists honked their horns in support of the workers who had gathered outside the Intercontinental early Sunday. Music in Spanish blasted next to a tent with donuts and coffee as strikers in red Unite Here Local 11 shirts checked in for shifts. Hennessy Fisk of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The day of the school shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas last year, Avery Bishop posted a TikTok video sobbing. "These things happen all the time and nothing changes," she said. After the Supreme Court overturned abortion rights following her home state's own restrictions, she posted again, "When you live in Texas and all you wanted was a hot girl summer, but now you have a no reproductive rights summer." In March, she posted about the need for comprehensive sex education and mourned the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. In May, she posted videos touting the need for affordable health and reproductive care. The fact that Bishop has professed her liberal views on race, abortion, immigration, voting, same-sex marriage, school shootings, and comprehensive sex education, which Texas public schools don't require, may not be surprising considering she's aged 26. What is startling is that Bishop has spoken out while competing for and as Miss Texas. The perch has normally been occupied by apolitical women, or is that apolitical? But in Bishop's case, the pageant queen has used it to push back against the far-right policies supported by Texas's white male leaders. Her platform, diversity and inclusion, they're criminalizing that now, represents much of what Texas has been outlawing. In June alone, Abbott signed the law banning diversity offices and training at state universities, sexually explicit books at public schools, drag shows, and gender-affirming care for youths. The first Asian contestant to win the crown in the pageant's 85 years, Bishop is an avatar for a rapidly diversifying state, one that, despite its historic image, is now majority-minority, a change that is remaking cities, rural areas, and political alliances, if not state leadership. And how is it that they can do that? We know exactly how they do it. Bishop has done her share of lobbying them. In Austin, she met with Republican leaders to talk about the state's needs. She pressed North Texas lawmakers against the bill to ban college diversity and exclusion programs, explaining how she benefited from them. And they snickered behind her back. Exactly. The measure ultimately passed the Republican-controlled legislature along party lines, but Bishop still felt she made progress to be seen. That's the first step in making a lot of change, she said. All right, go ahead and read the rest of the article. It's actually quite uplifting. And it's also curious that Miss Texas is the one that's stepping to the fore, but good for her. All right, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, asteroid impact. As anyone who's ever fallen down a rabbit hole on Pinterest knows, Wes Anderson productions are so distinct that they've inspired lines of houseware items and furnishings. Yeah, really. Anyone going to an Anderson film pretty much knows what they're in for. His latest offering, Asteroid City, is another nested story, a movie about a documentary about a play. If this sounds confusing, it really isn't. Set in the 1950s, most of the action takes place in the play, which is actually presented like a typical movie. Beautifully shot, on film, and boasting a color palette that's likely to inspire even more Pinterest boards. The TV documentary footage is clearly demarcated by the fact that it's 4:3 black and white. Starring Anderson stalwarts like Edward Norton and Jason Schwartzman, this one also features some famous newbies to the Anderson universe, including Tom Hanks as a grieving grandfather and Scarlett Johansson as a film actress who's more than a bit reminiscent of era screen legends Marilyn Monroe or Kim Novak. The play part of the film is about a group of people gathered in a mock-up of a southwest desert town to honor some young astronomers, several of whom have just lost their mom. The theme is about loss, grief, and the process of trying to move forward, and is arguably the most mature and meditative film of Anderson's career so far. Nevertheless, Asteroid City is overall funny, quirky, and occasionally self-deprecating, with moments that are as bright as a summer day in the desert. While what you witness with this one may take some time to digest, and a second viewing might help you catch some of the subtle placements, ultimately you'll be moved by Anderson's approach to his story and warmly impressed by the production design and performances. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwon is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-Hee. I've been talking today with Seung-Hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1835. That was the day that textile workers walked off the job at 20 mills in Paterson, New Jersey. But this was not a strike like we might picture one today, with burly men walking the picket line or women chanting as they carry picket signs. In Patterson, most of the strikers were children, ages 10 to 18. Many were young girls. Child labor was in high demand in the silk mills because of their small, nimble fingers. The children walked off the job because they wanted an 11-hour workday and a 6-day work week. They were tired of working 13 grueling hours a day, 7 days a week. Soon, their parents formed the Patterson Association for the Protection of the Working Class to support the strikers. There were no labor unions in Patterson back then. The company refused to negotiate. Women textile workers at other mills in the area also walked off the job. At its peak, 2,000 workers had walked out on strike. Finally, after 6 long weeks, the company agreed to a compromise. They settled on 5 12-hour days and 9 hours on Saturday. The children went back to work to a 69-hour work week. Strike leaders were blacklisted from the mills. This would not be the last time that child laborers took a stand on the job. In 1912, children workers were an important part of the famous Bread and Roses strike of Lawrence, Massachusetts textile workers. In 1933, children workers in Allentown, Pennsylvania sweatshops joined in a strike. Their participation led the governor's wife to join them on the picket line. The strikers there won an increase in wages and reduced hours. Children fought against their exploitation by taking to the picket lines. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon. On the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit. We continue under an active heat advisory, and we're going to get really hot with record temps tomorrow. Expecting highs of only in the mid-90s to low 100s. Sunny throughout the day, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the upper 50s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then mainly sunny tomorrow, near record high temperatures. Highs in the low 100s, winds out of the northwest. Out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen remains the predominant pollen in the area, and it is high. And the air quality for the region is in the good range at 23 parts per million, and the daytime UV index also remains very high at level 9, so you do know to take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.98 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 72%. And it will get drier throughout the day, fortunately. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 64 degrees with rain showers. Paris is 75 and sunny. Rome is 84 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 81 degrees and partly cloudy. Kabul is 80 and sunny. Hong Kong is 83 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay for heavy winds. And New York, is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and fair, but they continue with the air advisory. Wear a mask. Stay inside. Have filtered air if you have it. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Thousands rallied in Australia yesterday, Sunday, to back a campaign to recognize the country's Indigenous people in the Constitution ahead of a referendum later this year after a recent dip in support for the change. The referendum, likely to be held between October and December, seeks to amend the Constitution and establish an advisory body called the Indigenous Voice to Parliament to give Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people a direct say in policies that impact them. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's center-left Labour government backs the change, while the opposition Liberal National Conservatives urged a no vote. An Australian Council of Social Service tweet yesterday showed Sydney rally attendees in T-shirts with words "Vote Yes" and caps with the words "The Uluru Statement," referring to a document that calls for an Indigenous voice. One rally-goer, Jason Howard, said the event was a great opportunity for all Australians to get behind something that's going to make this country better. Another attendee, Isabel Smith, said in her opinion the referendum was the most important issue in Australia. It'll bring Australians together, and I think voting yes is the most important thing that people can do, she said. The Yes 23 group, behind more than 25 rallies nationwide, said the crowd in Sydney was around 3,000 and that it expected up to 25,000 people to participate in total. The day of action comes after support for the referendum appeared to be ebbing. According to a poll last month, which showed no ahead for the first time, 51 to 49%. Opponents, including some Indigenous people, have said the proposal lacks detail and will divide Australians. Indigenous Australians, who account for 3.8% of the population, face disadvantages, including discrimination, poor health and education outcomes, and high incarceration rates.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Katerina Demeny of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The mayor of Lisbon has been accused of boycotting Portugal's first memorial to victims of slavery, a long-delayed project in a country still struggling to confront its role in the transatlantic slave trade. Proposed over 5 years ago by Portugal's Association of African Descendants, the memorial, which would consist of rows of sugarcane painted black, was meant to be erected at Campos de Sabalos, a central square near Lisbon's Tagus River. From the 15th to the 19th century, 6 million Africans were kidnapped and forcibly transported by Portuguese ships and sold into slavery, primarily to Brazil. But little is taught in schools about Portugal's involvement in slavery, and its colonial past is widely seen as a source of pride. No wonder we're trying to get away with history here. The memorial, funded by the City Council, was approved as part of the city's 2017-2018 budget, but construction has been delayed since then. The group said in a statement that obstacles have been created, including requesting less sugarcane and changes to construction materials and to the budget. Carlos Motis of the center-right was elected mayor in 2021, but the process of erecting the memorial only resumed in September of last year. At the time, his office said approval was still needed by the Directorate General for Cultural History and Lisbon's Parking Company. Well. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays on the 4th of July. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.